Hey Mustangs, this is our last video in our virus series here, so we're going to be taking a look at how viruses make you sick and preventions and cures as well. So first things first, are viruses bad? I asked you this same question when we talked about bacteria, so we want to see, are viruses bad? The answer to this is yes. All viruses are bad. Whatever the virus is, whatever their host cell is, it's detrimental to that host cell. Eventually, that host cell will either be damaged or destroyed. So all viruses are bad. They have no big purpose like bacteria do, or they're decomposers that make life possible on this planet. Viruses, all they do is look for host cells to make more viruses. That's it. So all viruses are bad in some way. They can't kill all cells, but whatever their host cells are, they will be harmed. So how exactly do viruses make you sick? This connects back to how viruses reproduce. So remember, viruses cannot reproduce on their own. They have to trick a host cell into making more viruses for them. So if you remember the steps here, first the virus identifies its host cell by using its protein receptors as keys to getting entrance. Then the virus either enters a cell or inserts its DNA or RNA. The host cell starts reading the DNA or RNA instructions and building more viruses for the virus, and then the host cell is usually damaged or destroyed in some way. Okay? Now, if cells are being destroyed, that is what makes you sick. The more cells being destroyed, the worse you're going to feel, because your cells are you. You're a multicellular organism. So if your cells are dying, that means a part of you is dying, and you don't feel very good when that's happening. Now, in animal viruses, there is something similar to the lysogenic cycle that we saw in bacteriophages. So in the case of many animal viral infections, the animal cell becomes a virus factory. It starts pumping out those viruses, as we see in the image here. And that initial infection causes the organism to be sick. But with some viruses, such as the herpes virus, the human papillomavirus, and even the chickenpox virus, those viruses can actually go dormant inside of cells. Very similar to the lysogenic cycle. So any cell that has the virus DNA or RNA in it, whenever it makes a copy of itself, now you have 2 cells that have the virus instructions. Those make copies, now you have 4 cells, then 8, and so on and so on. So you can actually make a ton of cells that have the virus DNA or RNA laying dormant inside of them. Okay. Let's use the herpes virus as an example here first. So with the herpes virus, there's many different types of herpes viruses. The one that causes genital herpes is not the same, for example, as the one that causes cold sores. So let's use the cold sore example. It's a little less gross here. So with cold sores, once you get a cold sore, you will have that for the rest of your life. The initial infection you can see as an actual open cold sore, but then your immune system fights it back, and in some cells, the virus DNA or RNA lays dormant. Okay? So it stops being a factory and everything shuts off, not making the viruses, and the instructions are just going to lay dormant in there. Then later in life, when you become stressed out or your immune system is weak for some reason, the instructions get turned on, and all of a sudden you have a cold sore again. So for the whole rest of your life, you will have that cold sore. There will just be times where the virus instructions are laying dormant and those cells aren't producing the virus. Same thing for genital herpes though too. That's why they say that there's outbreaks for genital herpes and stuff like that. Another example is the chickenpox virus. With the chickenpox virus, if you get chickenpox the first time, the initial viral infection, you wind up with little red dots all over your body, and it kind of looks like mosquito bites, and it's itchy and uncomfortable and everything. For most people, that's it. That's the end of the infection. But for some, the virus instructions lay dormant in their cells, skin cells throughout their whole body. And later in life, they become stressed out, their immune system becomes weak, and they turn on. But this second infection with the chickenpox virus, we don't call it chickenpox, we actually call it shingles. And instead of little red dots all over their body, they get big, nasty, pussing scabs. And I had chickenpox when I was younger, so I'm hoping that I don't get this, because I've actually heard people say that it's extremely painful to where they can't put on their shoes or they can't even put on clothes because the clothes hitting those scabs, it hurts so bad. Okay? So with some animal viruses, you can have a second or third or fourth infection based on the original infection that started. Now, With current events, let's take a look at the new coronavirus. Now, if you want to show that you know what you're talking about, don't just call it the coronavirus. This new coronavirus, coronaviruses is a category of viruses. SARS, MERS, those were also coronaviruses as well. And since it's a category, it's kind of like saying birds. If you just say bird, you're like, wait, what type of bird are you talking about? I know it's a bird. You can imagine what it has wings, feathers, all that stuff, but there's different types of birds. Same thing with coronaviruses. That's the name of the category of viruses, and there's different types. So the correct name for this new coronavirus is SARS-CoV-2. Okay, SARS-CoV-2, not COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the virus. The disease it causes, the respiratory problems that ensue after getting it, is called COVID-19. Now, when you take a look at the parts of the body that the SARS-CoV-2 infect, it's the respiratory tract, so the lungs, the throat, and usually the nasal cavity. Specifically, if this is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it's going to use the ACE2 receptors found in those cells in the nasal cavity, the throat, and the lungs in order to gain access to those cells. Once it does, SARS-CoV-2 is a RNA virus. So it's going to inject its RNA into the body or into the cells. And then the usual we've talked about before with animal viruses. So they identify the host cell, put the DNA or RNA, and then they go and they do their thing. They turn the host cell into, in this case, a SARS-CoV-2 virus factory. And it just keeps on pumping out those viruses. Eventually, along come your cytotoxic T cells to destroy these cells and stop them from making viruses. But as I said in the previous video, a huge complication that we're finding with the SARS-CoV-2 virus is that these cytotoxic T cells in some people are going out of control. Instead of just killing the cells that are actually infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, they wind up killing healthy cells too. And that is not a good thing. So not just the infected cells are dying, but now other cells that are not infected are being killed by your own immune system. Finally, we get to preventions. So how can we prevent viruses? Just like with bacteria, the key is not letting them get into your body. So main ways that viruses get in, your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. So if we keep them out, we should be fine. So one way to do that is, of course, washing hands. With many viruses that contain an envelope on the outside, the soap actually helps break them apart. Not all viruses have envelopes though. So many viruses can get trapped in the lipids of the soap and then get washed down the sink. Key, remember, is washing your hands for at least 20 seconds and washing them good. You can't just do like a quick scrub and you're done. You have to really get in there, scrub the nails, behind the hands, everything if you're going to do a good job of getting rid of viruses that way. Being socially responsible. So in being socially responsible, remember, don't cover with your hand like this when you cough or sneeze. Make sure you cough or sneeze into your arm or your elbow there. That's the best way to prevent the spread. Right now, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is spreading so rapidly in droplets. So when people cough or sneeze, the virus is carried in droplets and then other people inhale them, and that's how they wind up getting the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And then finally, a vaccine. We don't have vaccines for all viruses. Most RNA viruses that mutate very rapidly, it's hard to create a vaccine against it. Because if you remember what a vaccine is, inside the liquid that's being injected into your body, in this case for viruses, it has a weakened form of the virus, a mimicked form of the virus, or parts of the virus. You inject that into your body, it shows your immune system what the real virus looks like. So later in life, when the real virus gets into your body, your immune system already knows what it looks like and attacks and destroys it right away. So that's the whole point of a vaccine. With the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it's about a year away before we'll actually have a vaccine. So by next season, when this comes around again, hopefully we will have a vaccine ready, and that will prevent the extreme measures that we're going through now. And I'm saying extreme, but they're extreme but necessary measures that we're going through now. So next year when we have the vaccine, we won't have to do what we had to do this year. Finally, are there any cures? The answer is no. There are no man-made cures for viruses. The key to getting rid of a virus is for your immune system to fight it off. We can't do anything about it medically right now. It all comes down to your immune system. And our immune system is actually pretty good at fighting off viruses. Unless you're really young, really old, or have a compromised immune system, your immune system will fight off that virus. But it all comes down to whether or not your immune system can. There are some viruses that our immune system is not very good at fighting off. A good example is the Ebola virus. Most human immune systems cannot fight off the Ebola virus very well. That's why it has a high death rate. Rabies. If you get rabies, if you get certain shots before you show symptoms of rabies, you can actually survive. But once you start showing the symptoms of rabies itself, it's got like a 99% kill rate. So very, very high kill rate with that one. And a big thing here that you must understand is that antibiotics will not work against them. Antibiotics are cures for bacteria, not viruses. So it comes down to the success of a good, well-working, effective immune system.